I saw a very interesting observation by a guy called Chad in a Facebook group called Simulation Nation, which is a great little group. Do join it if you haven't already. And what he said was that observations that have been made about the simulated universe is largely based on the technology at that time to describe it. So, for example, in more recent times now, of course, we've got virtual reality. And virtual reality is great because it's getting to the point where it's almost indistinguishable to looking around in the real world to when you've got your VR goggles. Now, the thing that kills it is the fact that you can still see the border of the eyepieces, the rim. So obviously that breaks immersion to some degree. But it's just going to get better and better until you don't even realize you're in a simulation, which really gives a lot of weight to the argument that we are in a simulation in the first place. But then going back before that, before VR, we have the whole computer simulation idea. We're in a computer game, if you like, because again, that at the time made sense. And then before computers, they talked about the universe being a clock. If you go back further again, in fact, also you have the holographic universe. That actually the universe is this flat hologram, and then it's projecting the world from that. Now, if you go back hundreds or thousands of years to kind of ancient civilizations, they've, in many different types of religions, they've always talked about the fact that things are not really real in the true sense, and that it's an illusion. And I think the funny thing is we think about how we've evolved, quote unquote, and that we're somehow at the pinnacle of technology, our outlook. But I would argue we've gone downhill to some degree in other parts of our way of thinking. You've got the Mayans, you've got the Egyptians, and thousands of years ago that were already coming up with these concepts, and they didn't have the internet, they didn't have social media. These are just things that have come to them, maybe through meditation, maybe because they're always outside and they're able to observe things better, whereas we're sort of staring at screens all day long, whether it's TV, phones, etc. As I'm doing right now, recording this video. But then, back in their time, they wouldn't have computers, holograms, etc. So, they talk about mirrors now, maybe not a mirror in the sense that we know it nowadays. Maybe they didn't have mirrors as far back as that. But even something as simple as looking into a pond. Now, a pond is effectively a mirror, isn't it? It's reflecting what you see when you look down at it. And if you didn't really understand the science behind how a reflection works, could you argue that they thought that they were looking into the real world, the other world, if you like, and then we are the projection? And of course, if you stand in front of a pond and you're waving your hand about, it's going to give you an exact reflection of whatever you're doing. Maybe it's deeper than that. Maybe I'm simplifying it. I don't know. And I think it's also interesting that there are many different religions, and I don't want to get into talking about religions too much, because obviously everybody has their own belief. But could it be that actually all religions are right? Rather than this concept of, my religion's right, so yours is wrong. There can only be one God, so yours must be wrong, and the other 300 odd is, mine is the correct one. All the others are imposters, or whatever you want to call it. But actually, could you argue that all of these religions, all of them are correct, and all they're doing is they just have their own way of explaining the, when I say God, I'm not talking about in a Christian sense, more kind of the architect, the programmer, it's just their explanation for that. So I thought that was a really interesting point, that, everything is just explaining the same thing, but depending on your time period, it's just using different terminology. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. Do drop a comment what you think about this. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Would love to hear what you think about this. So if you've got anything from this video, if you enjoyed it, please give me a like. I'd really appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't already, if you would like to see this kind of content. That would mean a lot to me. So thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you guys soon.